My name is Lois Carrington. I am 62 years old. And 3 nights before Christmas I heard the words no mother should ever hear. I was folding towels in the laundry room, the dryer humming, steam curling into the air when the door left slightly ajar betrayed the truth. My son Daniel, the boy I carried for 28 hours of labor. The man I once called my pride, lowered his voice and said to his wife, "Rebecca, the best Christmas gift would be if she just died." I froze, the red towel in my hands suddenly heavy as stone. I waited for laughter, for some sign of a joke. None came. Instead, Rebecca's voice drifted back, calm and ordinary. "You said it, not me." The silence afterward pressed harder than the words themselves. I stumbled upstairs to the in-laws suite where they allowed me to stay, the one room I was never permitted to decorate, the room without locks. My knees shook, but I forced myself to sit on the edge of the bed. The truth echoed, over and over. My only child wished me gone, as if my death were a relief. For years I had been the quiet support, the babysitter, the bill payer, the woman who had sold her own home to help Daniel and Rebecca buy theirs. I believed love would be enough. That night, staring at the faded walls and the untouched suitcases in my closet, I realized love had become a one-way current. If you are listening, imagine for a moment hearing your own child wish you away. What would you do? Would you scream? Would you collapse? Or would you gather the pieces of yourself and prepare to act? That night, I reached for my notebook, wrote down Daniel's words, and promised myself I would never forget them. They would become the beginning of my answer. I sat in that small room, the one they called generous, though it held no sign of me, no piece of my history. My chest ached but no tears came. Instead, there was a hollow silence inside, a quiet so sharp it hurt. I thought of the years that had led me here, every sacrifice woven into the fabric of this family. When Daniel lost his job, I canceled my cruise and gave him the money I had saved. When Rebecca wanted a bigger house, I sold the home my late husband and I built together and handed over $120,000 to make their dream possible. I had told myself I was investing in my son's future, but really I was erasing my own. The memories came in flashes, the late nights rocking my grandchildren to sleep when Rebecca wanted me time. The grocery bags I carried in week after week, filling their pantry without being asked. The bills I slipped money toward when they were just short this month. I had convinced myself it was love, but love without gratitude slowly drains the giver dry. That night, I sat on the edge of the bed staring at the closet. Inside were the suitcases I had not touched in 3 years, still tagged from trips never taken. The smallest one still carried the label from that canceled cruise. My life had been on hold, waiting for Daniel and Rebecca to appreciate me. I leaned back against the wall, notebook in my lap, Daniel's words written in dark ink across the page. I traced them with my finger, the way I used to trace his hairline when he was a child asleep on my chest. How could the same boy who once cried for me in the night now wish me gone? Silence filled the room. Not peace, not rest. It was the silence of being invisible, of being seen only as an obstacle. The ache did not roar. It whispered, steady and cruel, "You are not wanted here." And in that whisper, a seed of resolve began to take root. The next morning, I forced myself into routine. I folded laundry, brewed coffee, smiled faintly at my grandchildren, and nodded through Rebecca's clipped instructions about the day. On the surface, everything looked the same. But inside, I carried the weight of those words, a secret bruise no one could see. After breakfast, I went back upstairs to the in-law suite. My hands trembled as I opened the desk drawer where I kept old mail. The top envelope bore the mortgage company's logo. I tore it open carefully, almost hoping it was nothing. 3 months past due. My breath caught. The house that had cost me my savings, the one Daniel promised would always be part mine, was teetering on the edge. I opened my laptop, something I rarely did. Numbers appeared like small betrayals across the screen. The joint account I had set up for emergencies was nearly empty. Quiet withdrawals, week after week. Thousands gone. I had stopped checking years ago, trusting Daniel's word when he said they only used it sparingly. Now I saw the truth. It was not an emergency fund. It had become their private allowance. I leaned back in the chair, sick to my stomach. My savings had not been gifts of love. They had been lifelines taken without gratitude. How many times had I filled the fridge thinking it was kindness, when it was really just covering their overspending? Voices carried up from downstairs. I moved to the stairwell and listened. Daniel's voice was low, tense. "That emergency account is empty. Completely drained." Rebecca answered, casual. "What about her other one? The one she uses for Christmas gifts?" Daniel snapped back. "I'm not robbing my mother." But there was no conviction in his tone, no outrage at her suggestion. Just a pause, followed by, "I'll figure something out." I stepped back, pressing a hand to the wall. The betrayal was no longer just whispered wishes. It was numbers on a screen, overdue bills, and secret conversations about what else they might take. Back in my room, I opened the bottom drawer and pulled out a thick folder. Inside were documents I had nearly forgotten: the co-ownership deed, notarized agreements, letters from the lawyer my husband and I once trusted. I ran my hand over the neat signature, my own name still printed clearly. Daniel had promised to remove me, but he had never filed the papers. I whispered aloud, almost in disbelief, "My name is still here." It was as if a hidden door had opened. Beneath the ache, something stronger stirred. Proof, leverage, a reminder that I was not powerless, not yet. That evening, after the house had grown quiet, I sat at my desk with the folder spread out before me. The papers smelled faintly of dust, untouched for years, yet every line carried a memory. My late husband Richard had insisted we keep copies of everything. Lois, he would say, trust people with your heart, not your money. At the time, I thought it cynical. Now I saw it as foresight. I pulled out an envelope labeled in Richard's handwriting, Plan B. Inside were the documents he had once walked me through: co-ownership deed, letters from our lawyer, even a separate list of account numbers Richard urged me to keep away from Daniel. I remember rolling my eyes back then, insisting family could be trusted. Tonight, staring at Daniel's casual betrayal, I felt only gratitude for Richard's caution. With steady hands, I picked up the phone and dialed a number I had not called in years. "Sophia Miller," answered a familiar voice. Relief washed over me. Sophia had been our attorney for decades, a woman who knew our history. "Sophia," I said, my voice thin, "I need to know if the paperwork we filed on the house is still valid, the one with my name on the deed." She paused only a moment. "Of course it is. Daniel never filed the removal. You never signed anything. You still own 40%. I closed my eyes. For the first time in days my heart slowed, so I still have rights. "You do," she replied gently. "Tell me what happened." And I did. The overheard words, the drained accounts, the overdue mortgage, the pressure to consolidate finances under Daniel's control. When I finished, silence hung on the line until Sophia spoke firmly. "Lois, you are not trapped. You have power here. If you want out, we can act." "I don't want revenge," I whispered. "I want out, but on my terms." "Then we draft a notice of intent to sell. It will land hard. Are you ready for that?" I looked around the small room, at the faded curtains Rebecca never let me replace, at the bed where I had swallowed disappointment night after night. My hand rested on the suitcase still waiting in the closet. "Yes," I said, "I am ready." Sophia promised to prepare the papers by morning. After I hung up, I opened my suitcase and began to pack. Not frantically, not in fear, but with careful resolve. I folded each sweater as if tucking away an old version of myself. I set aside only essentials: clothes, my passport, Richard's watch. Finally, I placed the envelope labeled Plan B on top. It was more than documents. It was proof that even after years of giving, of being drained and dismissed, I still had something left that was mine. That night, as snow drifted outside the window, I whispered into the silence, "You wished me gone, Daniel. You will get your wish, but not the way you think." The next day was Christmas Eve. The house smelled faintly of cinnamon candles and the artificial pine of the tree in the living room. But beneath the festive veneer, cracks were already spreading. By mid-morning, Sophia had sent the official notice of intent to sell, addressed to both Daniel and Rebecca. It arrived in their inboxes like a spark dropped into dry straw. I could almost hear the chaos ignite from upstairs. Around noon, the first tremor hit. The lights flickered, then went dark. The television shut off mid-commercial, the dishwasher ground to silence, and the hum of the refrigerator faded. Daniel stormed into the kitchen, phone in hand, cursing under his breath. Rebecca followed, her voice shrill. "What do you mean the power is cut? We have guests coming tonight. My mother is flying in tomorrow." Daniel's answer was muffled, but I caught enough. "The bill wasn't paid." "I thought, Mom," he stopped himself, glancing toward the stairs, toward me. I stayed in my room, listening. Rebecca's voice cracked. "You said she would cover it like always." Their argument rolled on, voices rising and falling, each blaming the other. Downstairs, the Christmas tree stood in darkness, its ornaments glinting faintly in the dim afternoon light. Meanwhile, I opened my small suitcase and placed a tin of cookies inside. Then I thought of the children. They had done nothing to deserve this. Quietly, I wrapped 3 small gifts in plain brown paper, one for each grandchild, and wrote their names in thick marker. Inside each package, I placed a short letter. I wrote of love, of baking pies together, of bedtime stories, of the way their laughter had once filled my life with hope. I ended each letter the same way: "None of this is your fault, remember that." By the time I sealed the last envelope, the house below had grown louder. Rebecca slammed cabinet doors. Daniel barked into the phone at the utility company. Panic was replacing denial. I sat at my desk listening to the storm unravel. That evening, Rebecca stomped upstairs, her perfume heavy, her eyes wild. She pushed into my room without knocking. "Did you cancel something?" she demanded. "The mortgage, the power, why is everything collapsing right now?" I looked at her calmly. "Because you built your life on a foundation I paid for, and I am done paying." She stared at me, stunned into silence. Then she turned, muttering, and slammed the door behind her. I exhaled slowly, my hands steady. The fallout had begun, and while they scrambled in the dark, I felt only clarity. For the first time in years, I was no longer the one unraveling. They were. The house was still dark when I rose before dawn. Snow dusted the windowsills, and the air inside was colder than usual. I dressed quietly, pulled my suitcase from the closet, and set it by the door. Each zipper, each fold of clothing felt like a line drawn, an ending written in fabric and resolve. Downstairs, the tree loomed in the corner, ornaments glinting faintly in the gray light. I knelt and placed the 3 simple gifts beneath its branches. No ribbons, no glittering boughs, just brown paper and words of love sealed inside. It was all I could give my grandchildren now, and perhaps all they truly needed, proof that their grandmother loved them without condition. The airport shuttle pulled into the driveway at exactly 4 a.m. I wheeled my suitcase to the door, pausing for a long breath. Behind me lay years of silence, of being treated as invisible, of waiting for gratitude that never came. Ahead lay only uncertainty, yet for the first time I felt steady. I stepped outside, the cold biting my cheeks, the snow crunching beneath my shoes. As the driver loaded my bag, I glanced back at the house. No light glowed from within. No warmth spilled onto the porch. It stood dark and silent, like the hollow shell of promises never kept. On the ride to the airport, I leaned against the window and watched the world blur past. Christmas lights still twinkled on neighborhood lawns, though none shone in mine. Families would gather, children would laugh, but my chapter in that house was closed. When the plane lifted off hours later, I pressed my forehead to the window. Below, the land spread out in neat squares of snow and trees. I did not cry. Not when the seatbelt sign dinged. Not when the captain announced our arrival. Not when I heard French voices filling the cabin as we landed in Paris. I had not run away. I had not surrendered. I had walked toward myself, and for the first time in years that felt like enough. Back in the States, the notice from Sophia landed harder than I had imagined. By the time my plane touched down in Paris, Daniel and Rebecca had already received the email confirming my intent to sell. The silence on my phone did not last long. Missed calls stacked one after another, messages poured in, some pleading, some angry. I let them ring, untouched. It was 2 days later when I finally answered. Daniel's voice cracked through the line. "Mom, what are you doing? You can't just..." "I gave you exactly what you asked for," I said calmly. I disappeared. There was a pause, a shuffle, then Rebecca's voice in the background, sharp and panicked. "Tell her we can't lose the house. Not now." Daniel's words tumbled out. "We're drowning. The mortgage, the bills, we can't do this without you." My grip on the phone tightened, but my voice remained steady. "You stopped treating me like family the night you wished me dead. Since then, I've been nothing but a wallet and a babysitter." "We didn't mean it like that," Daniel whispered. "Yes, you did. Maybe not in those exact words every day, but in how you treated me. And now you will live with it." The line went quiet, except for his breathing. I closed my eyes and added, "This house was never just yours. You forgot that, and now the papers will remind you." When I hung up, my hands trembled not from fear, but from release. The reckoning had come, not with shouts or revenge, but with truth laid bare. Paris in winter was cold, but the air felt lighter than it had in years. One evening, I sat alone in a small cafe near the Seine, a notebook open in front of me. I wrote the words slowly, letting them sink into the page. I didn't just walk away. I walked toward myself. For so long, I believed love meant giving until nothing remained. I thought being a good mother meant covering debts, filling pantries, silencing my own needs. But love without respect is not love. It is servitude, and family that treats you like a burden is not family, no matter what name they carry. I closed the notebook, sipped my tea, and looked out at the glowing city. I missed my grandchildren, yes, but I had left them something no darkness could take, a reminder that they were loved, and that love does not mean erasing yourself. To anyone listening, hear this: you have the right to draw a line. You have the right to keep your dignity. And sometimes the bravest act is not staying but leaving. If this story has touched you, I invite you to share it. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments where you are watching from. Because stories of strength, of survival, and of quiet justice deserve to be heard across every corner of the world.